you. I didn't see you.
Hello.
Yeah, how about that?
As the artist said last week, this beautiful city of Columbus, Ohio. Let's give Columbus, Ohio a beautiful applause. I thought this artist last week was from somewhere else and was coming in on Columbus and saying, this is a beautiful city. I said, no, I've lived here all my life, and I love it. So it cost me this week to look around and see maybe in a whole new way what a beautiful city this is. And here we are. Now, I did ask before we started, where else have you been besides Columbus and through these last weeks, maybe this summer? Dublin, Ireland. That's right, we have done a lot.
Not quite as exciting.
Not quite the same, but a spirit similar. Where else? Canada? I don't know. Canada?
Working.
Wonderful. What are you doing?
Working.
Oh, wow.
Cleveland.
I've been in Cincinnati too.
All right, so as we take all those places that we've been to this city, the city is all the more beautiful. And we have two artists with us, Michael Guinane and Eric Rausch, who have taken the beauty of this place to Cuba. And in that exchange, wonderful things have happened. And I was sharing with Eric and Michael that I taught students whose parents were chosen exiles out of Cuba during the time of Castro, because they were on a list that if they didn't get out of there, and those students missed Cuba. They were young adults, and they wanted to go back, but they knew they couldn't. And the reconciliation of art, you know, the peaceful way of exchange is just such a gift to us. So, Eric, tell us about you. Nice and loud now. We don't have a microphone. So.
No microphones today.
Oh,
okay. So, about me, I'm Eric Rausch. I teach here at the Cultural Arts Center. I'm coming up on 5 years here in the ceramics studio. I have a Bachelor in Fine Arts from ceramics. I can call myself an artist. It's my career. It's a weird career full of all sorts of different opportunities that I mostly get turned down for, but then when you get them and you can follow through with the project and finish it, it leads to another thing, and that's pretty much what led me to Cuba. I got a phone call that was an invitation to go along with the trip, and it was like, you know, how do you say no to that? So I hung up the phone, I called my wife. We have 2 small kids, so I had to, first things first, had to ask my wife if, you know, it's 6 days. And to her credit, she immediately said, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool! You have to do it." So I got invited, and I'm sure Michael's story is similar. A phone call from Michael Reese, who put this trip together. It's always an interesting phone call. Something interesting is going to happen when Michael calls you. So this time it was, "Do you want to go to Cuba?" Michael's been traveling to Cuba for many years now, dozens of years, I think, at least over 10 years. I don't know exactly, obviously. And he's been mostly going down there with art collectors and bringing them to Cuban artists so that these collectors who have means can go and purchase artwork directly from these artists in Cuba. And that purchasing goes a really long way in Cuba. To buy a piece of artwork for even $30, $30 is more than the monthly salary for a doctor in Cuba because of the way the government is. So artists have this really unique ability to create things with their own hands and sell them for a profit, and they can even sell them internationally. So there's this really vibrant, amazing arts community. They're very well educated in general, people in Cuba. And if they have an artistic bent, that's picked up on at a pretty early age. And they do benefit from a great deal of schooling, so their artwork is technically really amazing. I guess sadly kind of surprising to me was how advanced they were in technical understanding and conceptual art as well, really pushing the boundaries of what you think. And even politically, there were plenty of artworks. Yeah, I want to say the majority of what I saw, but maybe it's just the majority of what I was connecting to in the arts were paintings and sculptures about the media telling them one thing when they know in their hearts there's something different. But there's been so many years since the revolution that the Cuban people only know what they have. And it's a really complicated thing because we travel to Cuba, we get this experience, we come back and go, oh my gosh, it's so great, it's amazing, the people are amazing, the food is great, the colors everywhere, it's beautiful. But it's beautiful because it's not been updated since 1990. Every hurricane that's hit Havana has left destruction, so there's all these really beautiful crumbling buildings, but then it's, why are they beautiful? It's this troubling thing. And the people are amazing, and they open themselves up. I have pictures that I'll show you of having dinner with a Cuban family. They laid the table out, and they have so little, but they give so much. They're very funny up front. They're very loving and beautiful people, but then there's the whole shroud of they're disconnected from the rest of the world, and their government tells them one thing and does another, and so it's this beauty with this really complicated situation. And in current times, when we're talking about everything and we know all these things are happening, and what the United States administration does is so important to the economy of Cuba, to be down there and see the people who are affected by these policies is life-changing, certainly eye-opening, and definitely want to focus on the positive aspects of it and shoot for the optimism. But this whole talk, actually, I'm glad that we've had a couple months since the trip. We went in March, because I've been thinking about it since then, and the people and my experiences. So, as I feared, I would start talking and have trouble stopping. We want Michael to show you some pictures, and then I want to show you some pictures, and I brought things to pass around. So let me pass it over to Michael, and you maybe
Yeah, I'll start. I'll say some of the same. Oh no.
For all of you who may already know, but may not know, both Eric and Michael are instructors here at the Cultural Arts Center.
I opened with that. So I am Michael Guinane. I teach the painting. Twice a week I teach painting classes here. I went to the College of Art Design. I studied illustration there. And so yeah, you get that opportunity. Michael Reese calls you, and again, it's always a loud conversation on the phone. But he throws out this idea, and you say, yeah, I didn't have to. Not married, no kids, so I can say yes. I didn't have to ask anybody. Yep. So, but we went, and my expectations when you go, you don't know quite what to expect, and we do see that. And I think, like you said, I'm glad we had some time to process this, because so much even has changed in the past few months since we've gone to events and little subtle things that we may not hear about. But if you look it up, you can find out just the way the culture there is always moving, the politics are always flowing. I just really appreciated the people. And that's what a lot of my imagery, I'm going to go through a lot of photos, and again, ask questions if you have to, but I might have to fly through some of those photos because I have a lot on there. I had to edit down from the hundreds and hundreds I took, the people we met and the artists we met. And that's what I really wanted to get out of going there, was like, we have our art, and I'm, again, I'm a painter. You can see kind of my examples of my work I have to show downstairs. I'm part of that. So that's my style. But I wanted to experience those artists and meet the varieties that they would have, and to understand how politically charged that whole country is. And you were mentioning this about the artist's work. Yes, there's just beauty in the simple ideas that we see, but then that conceptualized way they can communicate a thought or an idea, because they have to get around their politics and still express what they were feeling. If they're feeling caged, if they feel this way or that, they can't put a picture of Fidel Castro in a painting and have us like, with Donald Trump, if you don't like him, you can make it very clear You know, I'm just an example of saying I don't like this. They can't do that there, so they have to find creative outlets to express a thought without it being so literal, and that just adds to such the element and the creativity that they have to come up with for conceptualizing all that work.
And
so
that depth of understanding, that helps me clarify a little bit of trying to say what I'm saying about the people. It's not that they don't understand the world around them, but a picture is painted for them, and then when you see this deeply conceptual art that really is hitting on the truth, it's you get they understand what's going on. It's not, you know, they're not brainwashed by any means. It's not like, so it's a really interesting thing when you meet the people and see from a little bit more from their art.
Right, absolutely.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So does the government pick up on any of those subtleties?
I'm sure they do, and they very much, if they do art shows there, they have to be regulated. The government has to approve things, and they can shut some of those artists down very quickly. In fact, now coming up, like next year, we even trying to get ourselves to go back with this opportunity. So the whole reason we kind of just left this out almost is the idea of us going down there was as artists as an exchange. The idea was that to bring back a bunch of Cuban artists to Columbus. And so we want to have us go down there, get our experiences. They're going to come up here. They still might, with our new administration, it's a little bit more difficult for them to get up here and do that part of it. But we want to go back and bring work. So we're in proposals even now. And it has to be approved by the government. And it has to be this and that. But even some of the shows that they're trying to do down there, the government's just like, no, can't have that artist. They're shutting people down and they're censoring what you can and can't see. So we see a lot of nice stuff. Yeah.
Can I have his t-shirt?
You know what's funny?
You know what? The answer, yes.
Yes.
Right now, in fact.
I bought another t-shirt in Cuba, and my wife goes, did they have another size? And I go, you know, it was odd when you went up to their t-shirt stands. It was like, I like that one, but I need a medium. And they go, no, this is the shirt. So no, you can't have it. It's almost one of a kind.
So I'd say just get into some of these images. And again, it's kind of a little sporadic. I'm going to start out with just some basic ones. Again, I took photos of a lot of stuff. And yeah, I think I'd be able to just scroll through a lot of this. But again, you see imagery like that of Che and Fidel everywhere. You know, and the Cuban flag is great. And people have, a lot of that is obviously government, you know, they're going to do that. But there's so much pride in where they are. You see the flag everywhere. You see how much those people love their country. Even though there's a lot of that, there's a lot in a lot of the art we saw too. It's expressing, I love Cuba. I want to get out and have a better opportunity, but I don't want to forget my roots. And there's so much of that we saw. So, yeah. And so I think the place we stayed then, that was us in the Boston building. So it's a great, most of the architecture you see there. It's just a lot of these old, because it hasn't been updated. You know, it's just great old buildings that had such character. It felt like you, again, it really is that kind of throwback to the 60s that you feel like when you're in there. And then I think a view from the apartment in the morning, overlooking like the Hotel Nacional and just the harbor of Havana. And so yeah, when you can wake up and watch the sunrise to that, it's pretty groovy. And just kind of, that's our group. So this is the artist that we had, just one of our nights there for dinner. So that's how many of us were there. I think everybody but me in that picture. And so yeah, we ate well, we got treated well. Again, we kind of got spoiled, so we got to meet. We want people who knew where to go, the good spots. But some of the things I think we think about when you think of Cuba, you know, are more like this kind of thing. You know, like, and they have like museums there of the revolution, and you know, we can look at it as Americans and see, oh, they're kind of displaying a shot down American plane. That's great. But you know, you just kind of, there's guards all over. They don't like you photographing them. That's the one thing. I got shooed away once or twice from places where.
That just real quickly, that glass building there, inside of it, that's the yacht that Castro was on from Mexico to Cuba in 1959. So inside, it's this beautiful glass atrium. There's like this big yacht in there.
Oh, grandma.
Oh, grandma.
That's the name of the yacht. Yep. So it's just this yacht just sitting up there. You can walk around the atrium and just see that's where the revolution started. And this is like another one of those things. This looks like kind of an abstract thing, but around the U.S. Embassy, they put up flags, poles, so that the people couldn't really see the ticker that said the news. So they couldn't really read and get the outside world information. So it almost looks like a really abstract art piece, so that it just kind of surrounds the embassy to kind of keep them isolated. But going on to just more of the beautiful architecture and the scenes, you see a lot of things that are falling apart. We get that old colonial look, and you get a mix of that old style architecture and that mid-mod century, you know, 60s Cal Deco, that style Deco kind of work. But this is El Prado, just like a nice strip. They had a lot of these areas where people would just gather. There were always guys, you know, they'd be playing chess, they'd be talking, there'd be just that social aspect of people just wanting to be out and about, just running around their town. And just, you walk around a square and suddenly you just come across this. You walk through a little narrow alleyway and it'd pop you out in these like wonderful, majestic, just beautiful places.
Havana.
What was that?
Well, this is old Havana, which
Yeah.
all of just like crazy.
Yeah, so that's where you can, it's just like a photographer's dream if you go through there. Again, just beautiful. Not the best representation of the cars, because those are more the modern ones, but you know, you just see so many of the old school.
It's really lit up like this, especially in Havana, where we were. One of our taxi drivers told me that that's only been in about the last 10 years, that the lights, all these neon lights, and there are a lot of LED lights, but it's all
Yeah.
very, very recent.
And one thing I did notice, especially in old Havana, you get the outside lights are very warm, orangey, red glowing, and then every doorway had these LED, this neon blue would be coming out of the doors. Just kind of a cool thing. And then like, you know, the Malecon. So this is a strip that goes along the whole coastline, and people just come out there and socialize. And one of our, Michael Reese, who took us there, he would tell us like, hey, you know the different spots with different groups, like this age kids, they hang out there. The people that want to like get like hook up with, you know, meet a girl or whatever, meet a guy, you know, and you go to this area of the wall, and they have different segments, but everybody just, you can just drive down it, and there's just hundreds of people just sitting there and just talking. It's right along the whole coast. It's just such a beautiful idea.
We're really proud of the fact that the coast in Havana is open to everybody. Everybody has the view of the ocean. There's no private buildings, right? And that's the Malecon. It's for everybody.
And then just, I mean, all the streets, you could just look down any street and see so much activity. I mean, everything. And you just kind of walk down and you felt so welcomed. And part of it, I mean, they have to be friendly to American tourists. They know they can't mess around with us because bad things might happen to them. But they also know that we have the money. And any little thing that they can do, they can sell. And it wasn't really panhandling at all, because again, the government kind of shuts that down. So nobody's really begging for money. They all want to like invite you in for have a drink or come, you know, I've made this craft or anything like that. And again, this example of these tight streets and old cars and people with food carts just coming up and down. It's just always activity everywhere you go. And again, I'm kind of flying through these, and then again, old buildings and the beautiful architecture up behind, and just kind of go through these quickly. Example, some of the guys wearing the old uniforms.
Was there a police presence?
Yes, but not as you might think. I mean, every so often you'd see, and some of maybe the spots that they might think tourists might be, there'd be one or two extra in the evening, and they just kind of be hanging out, just talking. There'd be guys like that in the uniform, just kind of chilling. But there wasn't a lot. Every once in a while, we started wandering, so we didn't go out in too many big groups. You know, we kind of split off our own. We did our own wandering, but yeah, they kind of maybe you feel them kind of following, maybe once or twice, but they weren't like on you or like staring, you know.
There were areas like that picture where there were guards, but every time I saw a police officer, I'd look at what they were wearing and their belt, and they're so much less intimidating than United States police officers. There's no guns on their belt. You know, they have like very little, and they're just, yeah, it's not a military state by any means.
Right. More on the streets.
They probably don't have money for guns for the police.
And then like just a random interior. This is like going up to a little restaurant, like bar, and I thought we walked through these kind of things, like how gorgeous is this? But it's just this like empty, unused space in a lot of these.
And the lines you see there during the day, it's laundry. There are people who live in this building, and that's what you're walking through, these like palatial, like plaster, amazing, and it's just like people's house because
yeah. I mean, it's used space, yes, but it's just like. Love
this is the beauty that you wouldn't have if there were money in the country, because these things, there's one picture, there's a huge pothole in the middle of this crowded street that, you know, if you, in a developed country, you pave those things over and more likely tear up all those bricks or put it right over top to make it, you know, lose it all.
So stairways, like, yeah, like you walk into a restaurant, there's the host stand, and then you can kind of just make your way up those stairs, and you get to a nice little top of the roof restaurant. These are totally different buildings. These are different nights. I'm kind of, you know, none of this is in real chronological order here. And there's little things. Like this is be a house. And if you look carefully, like old grandma's sitting in the bed, also kind of looking at the photo. And they would like, oh, take a picture. Absolutely. They were super friendly. They didn't feel like, oh, touristy people, Americans. They were just like, they wanted to talk. They wanted to, if they could, not even, it was a mix of English speaking and not, but they just wanted to, they appreciated it.
Were you limited with what you could say to them?
What was that?
Were you limited with what you could say to them?
We were told not to get into too much political talk, not trying to be like, oh, we haven't, you guys and your Castro and all that, but yeah, so we were told to be very limited, yeah.
Did anyone, do you or your partner speak Spanish?
Yeah, I was
Thank
speaking
goodness.
Spanish down there. Yeah, it was helpful.
He had to come and be our actual translator over that trip.
Yeah.
Apparently we had some issue where we weren't necessarily, like the government was maybe
We didn't go through a government travel agency. Michael set up the trip on his own because he has all these contacts. And because of that, the translator that he had over the last 10 years, every time, Tatiana, wasn't allowed to go because he didn't use a government. So she was not allowed to hang out with us, so then, yeah, it felt to me.
Right.
Fun. But, yeah.
Are we allowed to fall asleep because I'm tired?
Yes,
Sure,
of course,
It's a
absolutely.
nice dark room.
Absolutely, it's a good spot for that. So I mean, we have artisans that come across the street, or you just see somebody walking, but there's not really, some of the places have electricity, but a lot of them are just using that window light. And you go in and like talk to them, and you'd be it'd be dark in some of those rooms. They had some, but it'd be like, and a lot of guys like this would share, they'd be like, hey, we all share this room, it's our studio for the 5 of us, but we'd all take turns. And at least one of the places I went to. This isn't always everywhere, but in this circumstance, we said, the people that would have those different kind of times. And then little places like that, this is just a random bar. I followed a guy down the street, he's like, hey, come. He's like, have a mojito. I'm like, okay. And I totally good about that. And I was just by myself. I split up from the group and I felt comfortable enough. I wouldn't even do that in Columbus. But there I was like, yeah, sure. And then in most places, I wouldn't go through that doorway. But I totally went in and had a blast. And a lot more to the story, but I'll just leave it at that. But it's just, it's a little place like that. And I felt I'm just walking down the street, and this kid, his name was Fidel. He showed me his ID. His actual name was Fidel. And he walked down and he was like, hey, Fidel, you got one. And I'm like, hey, guys. And so you had that kind of thing. And then just kids playing, just became great subjects. Even for photographers, just ideas of what to do, and then, but then they're playing wherever they can, and I took a whole bunch of shots with these kids, and then they started getting into a fight, and then they made me pitch. That pitcher he wasn't great. So, but then they just let you play. One thing, Eric was really good about this, but we'd bring in my bag just a bunch of gum, candy, stuff like that, and the kids would just surround you, and then they'd just love to have you around. They'd follow you, and they'd you just give out little things, and then they'd be okay with you taking some photos and snapping, and then a lot of them would pose for you and try to really appreciate that. And yeah, so they were so much fun. But it's just that, and then just guys playing dominoes, this sort of thing you see all over. Which you can see that in a lot of neighborhoods, but just great subjects.
This guy, I was walking around with him when he took these pictures, and I walked up to him and introduced us just real quickly in Spanish and said, can we take a couple pictures? And can you go back to the guy? I have a picture over here. The guy in the fedora hat. He was like, yeah, you can take our picture, but you gotta pay us the money. But he was like really embarrassed about it. And I was like, okay.
And there was a lot of that too. Like when I walked into, I'll get to that in just a second here. We'll go to see the next one. Again, just random, and again, old buildings falling down with their beautiful architecture. Again, friendly people. She was just waving at us and saying hi, just chilling on the rooftop. And this, just. The kids are best. Yeah, I took a whole bunch of series of this. I just have 1 or 2 on here, but they made up a marble game where you just roll the marbles into a manhole cover, and wherever they landed, it was kind of like roulette on a manhole cover. And they were. I didn't get the whole group. There was a whole gang of these guys. They had their one leader who was just kind of watching over everybody, watching over his little gang of kids, and I just that kind of. And they were fun. And they were just they were kids like anywhere. It's that you have that same thing here in America, but it was just. They obviously have to deal with the politics and everything of the country, but they just kind of go through it. So, and one of the great things I did, and I really want to create a lot of art and paintings and maybe get into printmaking about this, but I walked through a doorway and it was just this boxing ring. And I talked to the guys, the manager, who told me, he's like, hey, come back when these guys are practicing, and he's like, hey, maybe he brought me in his office, like, maybe for a little donation, I'll let you hang around for a while and take some photos. So I gave him a little donation to keep the ring going. But that was him. and just meeting people like that, but then just getting this great imagery of some of these boxers just in their training and getting them, and again, these old rings were so cool, just great subject matter. I was kind of having that, and their families would kind of hang out as they're sparring and training, the brothers would try to give them advice.
I have a question about your donations. Did you give them American money or Cuban?
No, we only had Cuban money. So we tried to exchange here first to Canadian or euros, and then so the exchange rate was better, and then we did that. So they didn't really, there's not really much they can do with American money when they're there. They can pretty much only work with their currency. Yeah, great imagery of some of these people. There.
Not Cuban.
But there's another one, Eric digging up a hole. Again, we were there, we were trying to find the art, just coming up with stuff to maybe put into work. This is really what we did a lot of. And Eric was a big share with all this kind of stuff. This is him, we brought fishing line. You gave it to guys that were there just kind of fishing. We did, and again, that's part of the cultural exchange of us showing, like, hey, we're Americans, we're cool, just, if you want to use this, use it, not, trade with that.
Well, they always wanted it.
There's Eric facing a building. No, I'm kidding.
This is a good time to pass it around. Here's the etching I'm doing in that photo.
So he's just rubbing and getting like an etching of that.
Who had Christopher Burke had the graphite in his bag, right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, I want to take an etching of this, and then I go, I have paper, but I don't have. And Christopher Burke from behind me goes, wait, I think I have some drawing graphite. It was like some the nerdiest art thing ever.
So we can carry that kind of stuff around, but we get to that. And then, so getting into some of the arts we met. This was a little neighborhood we went to in Havana, but this is a view from one of the artist studios, and this was their studio that we went upstairs. This was a photographer, their house, and he brought out his work for us. And Eric, feel free to chime in on this, but this was, and this is just like a quick little image of like him just showing his photography. I don't have examples of his photos because I didn't want to sit there and ask to take pictures of his work.
Rene Pena.
Yes. Yeah. And again, a lot of these guys, they're world-renowned artists, but they're just kind of localized in this area. But they show, a lot of these people showed around the world. Getting into, again, this was like kind of a gallery, but it was like a gallery nightclub. Where people would go and socialize. So a lot of the nightlife was involved around the art world. And that, you can just go, and people were they'd have cocktails. There'd be a nightclub downstairs, like a place to have like a concert venue, I think a movie theater. It's all attached to this whole area. There's just
art. This place, I looked it up, it's called FA, Facilidad Arte Cubano, a facility of Cuban art, and it was artists who were like probably a decade older than us, but again, very well trained, highly conceptual, and walking through this building, just blown away by the quality of the art and the presentation, and the building in general. Like what the arts are doing in Columbus is what they're doing in Havana and Matanzas and everywhere we went.
Yeah, and it's high quality, and it's just fantastic. And then like something in the downstairs, it's like an example of the island of Cuba, but using all the keys.
This is the politically charged kind of conceptual thing. So the keys, because 20% of Cubans currently live outside of Cuba, and it's a huge problem for them because anybody who has a real opportunity to make a difference wants to leave the country so that they can make that difference abroad and send the money back to Cuba. Because if they stay in Cuba, they can't make more than $20 or $30 a month. So everybody's leaving. So then again, this is in that nightclub, and then all of a sudden you walk in this piece. This one, this piece I have in my presentation too. It's going to stay with me. This was the most powerful piece.
Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, there's so many, but I just have to edit down to get this time. And this is like another gallery we went to. I think this was 331. And again, some of them are just beautiful buildings and just great displays. The example of that kind of work and nice neighborhood.
Yeah, three
nice
house and trained and making money so they can afford to make this house look so beautiful. I mean,
again, this was a house that we go through. It's almost like a suburb neighborhood. They had guards there. Like it was like a subdivision. They had security guards on the corners there. So it was there was not that we ever experienced or see too much troublemaking or that, but again, that's our point of view of it. But again, that was like a drawing. You see it in the back.
Graphite on campus. That was his big thing.
And again, kind of went there. I think that's the same place. And then kind of went there. And we have with our friend Tariq, he took time to, in that place just to do some of his work and like take photos of some of these other artists. And we took advantage of the time we could, to do some of our own work. And this was down in Sandra Ramos's her studio. Again, different day, different time, but then she does a lot of this great printmaking. And again, I don't have too many examples. I think Eric, we might have some more. So I just have kind of, and then she'd just sit there and talk, and give us these art talks. We'd all sit and listen to these guys do presentations, kind of like what I'm doing now. They're just discussing their own work. And so I'll kind of keep moving. And this is Solomon. He was one of my favorites. This is the one I did buy a painting, not that large, but from him. And he was super friendly, super humble. And I don't know if he was just really nice or if he really did like my work, because we showed him, we brought some of the books that we had of our work in it. And he was like, oh, can you please sign this? Can you please sign my book? I'm like, you want me to sign your book? And like this guy, he was just fantastic with the words.
How do they get their supplies?
Glad you asked that.
Yeah, so there's a lot to that. I'll let Eric go into that too. But I mean, some of the supplies he has, even just see if I can pull back here one. Like even stuff on the floor, he was like, "This is all I have." He's like, I don't know if he's exaggerating, but he's like, "I need more." And
yeah, he said, "This is all the paint I had." Michael Reese brought him a bag full of paint, and he was like, "Oh my God, thank you." And he was telling me, he goes, "Tell him in Spanish, like, what do you need next time? What colors do you want?" And I was like, in Spanish, "What do you want?" And he was like, "This is perfect. I don't want anything. Anything is fine. This is all I have." And there's no store to buy it in. So if he ran out of that paint, he would just have to wait until the universe brought him paint again.
Yeah.
No, there's no. It's strange.
Yeah.
Nothing comes to Cuba, so they don't have regular stores to go to. It's on the black market as soon as it gets to the islands. You have to know someone's uncle when you go to their house.
Again, that's still his studio. Beautiful places, but again, a detail of, I just love this painting so much. Yeah, they were just really groovy. And so this is, I only have one or two shots, but we went to their art school at university, and this, one of the great things Castro did do was turn an old country club, and the old government was like, "This is our country club," and he's like, "Nah, this should be an art school." So you no longer have a golf course. We're going to turn this into their art school. And I don't have too many, like the architecture of it was very unique, and just the way.
There's a movie about this place called Hidden Spaces, and it's a documentary about how it's world-renowned brick architecture, and to the point, Castro had this grand idea, this will be an art school, and so they went through this whole process, but sadly, I think 3 of the 5 buildings were never finished, so they have these buildings that are just, they're mysterious because they're like beautiful but then they just stopped working and now there's no money. So
half finished, and then
that was
still be there, just kind of working, and they get interesting little sculptures of like a flute cannon.
Yeah.
That's fun. And then this is like the lobby when you go in, and we were just like, imagine that. I wish CCAD had that. But and then just somebody, a guy working on a sculpture with a little
like a speaker in the bottom.
And so there were students in there working. It's kind of old buildings, and it was great. Just walk around. They were again friendly to talk to, and that. And this was Eric's favorite place, I'm imagining. And this was Lolo Studio, which was just a great sculpture studio. Just fantastic, interesting
Did they
works.
pay for supplies for the students? Since there's a black market for supplies, did they pay for supplies for students?
They get, like this place was like just piled up with like things you could make sculptures from, and it looked like piles of old metal. There's supplies, it's a totally different concept down there, and that's what Michael's been doing is bringing supplies, and they get donations otherwise. But
And for some of the schools, we would bring supplies. I'm not sure about the college or the university there. They had.
The university has, we were talking, I overheard them talking, there's no supplies in the university, so the students they can't do much work right now, and there's no fix to the problem, so they still go to school, but they just have so little to make, so they just aren't making so much. Like and we left there and we were going, what are they doing then? And there's no answer. There's no like, oh, this is how you're going to fix that problem.
Kind of go through some of the sculptures. I'll kind of get through this quickly. I don't want to take up too much more time on it. Show it later. And again, this would be like a wall of their supplies. They kind of go through the scraps and they just pick out what they wanted, and they just kind of make the sculptures out of these kind of
This is a trained artist named Lolo. He started the school in Matanzas, which is an hour and a half outside of Cuba, and he did it to bring art to his local. So he's got about 7 or 8 artists in there that are making and trying to sell work, and then he does classes for kids in the little town, and it's, so yeah, in a way.
And this little sculptures, I just had fun taking photos of some of these little works, which are super playful and fun, but they have such meaning into what a lot of the struggles and what people can be going through.
How do they get their work out to the public?
Galleries, mostly. They have to be, and there's a very few artists that make it to that top echelon of internationally known Cuban artists, and it takes many, many years. That works.
Same here.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
And that was our group with those artists from.
nice.
So let's see. And so then we went to
Fuster.
Yes, thank you. And this was like a tile wonderland. It really was. It's like the whole community, the whole town. Not just like it started with the one.
This is his house where it started, but then
So this is home, and then the whole neighborhood. Everybody kind of got involved. So everybody kind of decorated their houses with these tiles and with the different kind of
So
sculptures.
he's like building these cement arches and then mosaic tiling all around it. It's mind-boggling, but it's at least 20 years of work.
And that's an overhead of a swimming pool.
Yeah.
What's it called?
The artist's name is Fuster, and so you're going to Fuster's. I don't know what the neighborhood is called.
It's pretty much called like the Fuster neighborhood.
Yeah.
If you just, it's a very well known.
Fuster. Here, I'll pass this around. This is I bought this tile there. The artist who does the mosaics, or his vision, he paints on tiles as well. So I bought that. I think that was like $35.
Yeah, so I'll kind of run through these too. But just every house, like their own homes. It's like let the family do it, make their own.
Did the family do it or did Fuster do it?
So Fuster is still doing it in his late 70s, because I asked about who paints the tiles, and he's still in the 70s in the studio, but his family is taking over. His son brought us in. You go to their house and they feed you lunch. It's like kind of a restaurant, but it's in their house, and so it's a family, and the village helps out. But it's his vision.
Yeah, it's his vision and
his drawings.
Yeah, just really cool. And a lot of details of like there were just walls along the street. They just would have hundreds and thousands of these things. You just gotta just take.
So
Yeah,
they
just
don't
do
have to have permission to do that, or do they?
I think it's kind of their. I mean, I'm sure they run it by, but it's just kind of like that's a whole neighborhood. It's just all like that. And then just a few random just street.
But
art.
all the street art is sanctioned by the government. In other words, nothing's there that the government doesn't want on the wall, even graffiti like this. But
there's some details of some graffiti and just
tourism's the industry too. So Fuster, that the government sees that as a good thing, I'm sure, because.
I think that's all I have. So I don't want to spend that time. So you want to hook up?
No, that's good because I have a lot. I have pictures of similar things. So maybe can you flip maybe half the lights on? I got some stuff to pass around as well. Set up.
But yeah, it really wasn't.
I had a question
Yeah.
about checking when you enter, before you enter Cuba. Was it hard to check?
Because you were with the group.
Repeat
You
that
had,
question? Repeat that question?
about checking, like getting into, like going through like the customs and all of that to get in. And because we were with a group, I think a lot of that was, again, we weren't quite as approved by the government as we thought, because Michael knows so many people and has so many connections there. But it wasn't really too much of a hassle. Getting out was a little bit harder, because you have to claim your art, and you have to make sure
For your baseball bat.
you don't accidentally wrap a baseball bat in your art and forget that you can't really bring that on a plane. Yeah,
His nephew just not getting
I went back for a
the
bit. But yeah, so some of our people got pulled aside and like, what are you bringing back? What are you taking? But getting in there, I think just because it took, sure, a little bit of time and like exchanging the money, we didn't want to do anything there too much, because those are just lines that go way too far. But yeah, but it wasn't a real major issue.
All right, I'll stand over here. I think maybe we'll leave the lights on because I'm going to pass a couple more of these things around. And you can still nap if you want. All right, so similar, I kind of went through at 600 photos on my just from my iPhone. I went through and I tried to kind of group them together, but I started here with our last taxi ride. So Michael and I were roommates. We went around the city. We went on little adventures together. Like almost any time we had 20 minutes to an hour, we just walked around. So including the last day, we had an hour before we had to get on the bus to go to the airport. We went and had breakfast, and this was the coolest old car that I rode in. Classic 1929 Ford, and this guy was so proud because the engine, everything was original, and it was the only old car that I saw with anything original. They were really proud of taking out the old car interiors and putting in like a 1997 Toyota Corolla interior. And like, look at how awesome it is. Okay. So yeah, old car photos. They're everywhere. It will be really amazing if and when the islands opened up to all the trade. What stays on the island, what goes. The view from the balcony that Michael talked about. I mean, we were so lucky to go on this trip and get these accommodations. This is the tallest skyscraper in the city. But again, you know, with beauty and being nicest, it's still pretty.
And with those apartments too, we were kind of just, everybody got divided into rooms, and there was like somebody living in the place with us, but then had their own separate little like area in the apartment, and then they'd have a couple bedrooms for us, and they'd be living there, and they'd, you know, offer, if we wanted to pay a little bit, like 5 cooks in the morning, whatever, for breakfast, they'd do that. Yeah. That's a great way for some of them to make money, was getting us, and they're like,
they had beer in the fridge that we could buy. Right. He double charged us. Our landlord didn't speak any Spanish. All the other landlords, or any English, all the other ones did. And I don't know, the universe works out, but they put me in the room with the Spanish-speaking guy. It was pretty funny. And then in the end, he was like adding up the beer, and I watched him add it up twice. So like I paid him like $35 instead of $25 for the beer. And, you know, it was funny.
But yeah, it's really it's those kind of ways that they can make extra income.
What's the Cuban money worth?
It's almost a 1-to-1 ratio. And Cuba they have 2 types of money. I'll pass these around. We can. One on both sides. Oops. This is the Cuban money that tourists can't use. And that's a picture of Che Guevara on it. That's 3 pesos, which is about 15 cents or something. It's a really small amount. We were using cooks, C-U-C, and those are, for 1 kook is about $1. Actually, 1 kook is worth a little more than $1. So we lost money, and they, as an American, they suggest that you change to euros or Canadian dollars before you go to Cuba and change, because there's a 10% charge. Castro, that's how he's like, I'll get back at you. Every time an American changes money, it's 10% more. Here's Rene Pena, some of the, you know, sexually charged, politically charged artwork. Really amazing guy. Abel, this is why I have the names on, because I have these names written down, because I'm terrible at remembering these kinds of things. This guy, internationally known, is shown in the MoMA, has shown, had a show in Japan he was telling us about, over in Europe. He's traveled, he's been doing art since the 60s. His whole thing is using, he was doing printmaking, and then he really fell in love with the wood part of the printmaking, so he started to sculpt the blocks into the artworks, and he makes a lot of wood technology fashioned out of wood, and he calls it his third world technology series, and it's tongue-in-cheek. And again, this is like a politically charged thing. He's saying, look at what the world has, and in Cuba, I can make this out of wood. So like he'll make an iPhone, and you have to turn a wooden knob, and it makes a piece of paper scroll, and you know, things like this. So,
and a lot of these like little puzzles like this, it would be
a bell barroso.
Yeah, and it'd be like, okay, there's a little maze. You know, here's the embassy. Here's how to get, and here's you have to go to the interview. You have to go through the queues, but you can't really get to the door to do where you want to go. So this is sort of a little marble game. You move around, but you can't get anywhere. And that kind of says some of the state.
And you know, this is watching what he has and hearing his story was when I really realized that as an artist, you have the ability to bring thousands of dollars back to the island with you, and you would think, oh, you're set. But everything's so inflated that what you can do with that amount of money is so little, because a bag of concrete costs literally 20 times what a bag of concrete costs here. And if you are redoing a house, you need many bags of concrete. So it's unrealistic even when you get the means in Cuba to advance.
So they do a lot of state, like here's collecting a bunch of bags of concrete to one place. I can do a little bit of the house at a time, slow it until I can get more concrete.
So more pictures from the Fox thing, just like I said, really well displayed. Somehow, you know, they're getting access to technology and materials, but it's few and far between. This was a really cool opportunity that I went with. Joey Monsoon was another artist there. We jumped in a cab with a couple collectors who were going to this place they called Art Brut, outsider art or brute art. The difference that they describe: outsider art is a self-taught artist. Brute art is a self-taught artist who has a mental deficiency of some sort, schizophrenia, things like this. So this is all outsider art, and this guy here started it, and you know, he's built this beautiful gallery again in a house, and he has taken it upon himself to start to represent these artists, and he's connecting with people like Duff Lindsay through Michael Reese. So he's making these connections internationally, trying to bring you know, more opportunities for these artists. So, you know, made us this beautiful little espressos, and this dog, which I found in the closet, and I was like, I just fell in love with it because I like weird stuff, I guess. And I was like, you know, asking, we were buying some things. I bought this print there as well. They had drawers full of prints, and so I think I bought this was really cheap, like $10. And this, I was ready, because some of their sculptures had real prices on them, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll buy it, whatever it is. And I brought it to them, and I was like, how much for the dog? And they laughed at me. And I was like, why are you laughing? They said, well, someone brought that in, some farmer from Cuba brought that in to their gallery and was like, hey, I'm a self-taught artist, and I like to make dogs. And they were like, okay, took it and put it in a closet. And it was like 3 years later, I dug it out of the closet, and I was like, I love this thing. And so he goes, I'll give it to you. And this was the first time in Cuba, and it happened to me maybe 3 or 4 times since then, where I was just having a personal connection with someone, and they said, take this thing. And each time I inadvertently teared up and, you know, said thank you graciously and took a picture with them. So that's the story of the dog that I'll, you know, treasure forever. I don't have a name for it yet. So here's Lolo's studio, definitely one of my favorite places. The only potter's wheel, I saw one at the International Academy, but this is the Potter Wheel of the Lolo Studio. I talked to this guy, I think I have this picture. This is a potter I forgot to bring. I have 2 mugs that I traded for in Cuba. I bought his mug, and then they called him into the studio, and I gave him this plastic container full of tools, which was like, for me, trash, basically, because I have clay tools like you don't believe. But there, he was like, oh my God, and he was like, give me this mug. So then I started talking to him about his pottery, and he had a crack in the bottom, which is what I talk to my students about here all the time. And he goes, I don't know why this happened, and this was all in Spanish, and I was able to tell him about the differences in thickness, and it just hit me. And this is now my next goal with Cuba is not only this exhibition, which I do want to tell you about before 1 o'clock, but Michael is trying to get it so that, Michael Reese is trying to get it so that some of us can go down there and collaborate in some way. And my goal is, and I've been planting seeds to go back to Lolo's studio and work with this potter and maybe teach a few other people the skill of throwing on the wheel. There's obviously people in Cuba who can do it. It's not like I'm going to be Superman going in there like, push that throw on the wheel. But it's something that I can do to maybe make an actual difference in somebody's life in another country, and that's very cool. We're all laughing in that picture because of, I brought pictures of my artwork, but then there's a picture of my daughter. Did this all.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is 100, I don't know if you're that familiar with that kind of currency, but is 100 pesos equivalent to $6?
I don't know. I don't know the exact amount there. I don't know the exact ratio of pesos to dollars.
Oh, okay, because whenever I was in Mexico before, I remember whenever I purchased something, it was 100 pesos. And
yeah.
I think
they're Cuban pesos. It is an equivalent. The dollar's much more. Yeah. So this is the Solomon guy. This is the plate. He's also a ceramic artist, and he does these awesome drawings on plates. And just like everywhere else in the world, ceramics is valued so much less than painting. So he had examples of paintings. His paintings were $300, and I was like, what about those 2 plates on the wall? Because of course. And he goes, oh, $10 each. I mean, okay, sold, but.
What did they say about, as you presented your art, What was their response? How?
They were so grateful to have us there caring about what they were doing, because being able to travel abroad seems to be such a dream that barely happens. And so, as like Michael said, they're asking us to sign the book. We brought a catalog with us. We were all part of Michael Reese's convention center thing. And, so yeah, this is Frank Muika. He does the graphite drawings. Very good English. Had a few really great conversations with him. One of them involving how the government reacts to this political art, because he spoke such good English. I could ask him that pointed question, which was your question earlier. And he said that they tend to be a little lenient on it. They tend to allow a certain amount of that type of work to happen, but there is a line where I heard there was a story about an artist who was trying to organize an art show that wasn't sanctioned, and they didn't put him in jail for that because that would have caused a huge uprising. They put him in jail for buying black market concrete.
And that was just recently, since we've been back, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So this is the ISA. Right at the opening, the gate to the ISA, there's a sphere out of carved brick, which that's just me in brick form. I just love it, in the whole building with this brick architecture. I love brick. Brick and me, we get along, so that was fun. This was the ceramic studio there. The plate that I bought. This was, I think, the most expensive thing at $100 that I bought, made by the guy in the middle here. Both of these were ceramic instructors there, so I talked with them for a while. I almost didn't buy this because it was so like red, white, like it's just so bright, and like I loved it, but then I had to go back and I started talking to him about it, and he said, it's stitched, it's the American and the Cuban story, and it's stitched, but it's unfinished, and he loved this plate. And then he goes, and when Obama came through here, I gave one of those to one of his people to give to him. So I don't know that he got it, but I gave one to Obama. So basically, guys, I have the same plate. We're getting close on time, but I have to mention these people. This is the Cuban house that I told you I got to go to. Ceramic artist. Sculpture artists. They trained in Germany. They were good enough in school in Cuba to be able to go travel abroad, but then they are now living in Cuba. So again, very aware of the world, very aware of their standing in the world politically. I got to sit around the table with them and their son, is a very bright kid he wants to be a psychotherapist. He's going to the university right now. He had just chosen not to vote in the presidential election that happened when we were there. You may know that for the first time since the revolution, Castro is not president. That election happened when we were there. All Cubans are forced to vote. He decided not to vote as a peaceful protest, so we had this whole discussion. His parents voted. They had a little like father-son discussion back and forth. It was really, as a fly on the wall, it was amazing, and as a human trying to understand, it's really difficult, but really opened my eyes to a lot. She ended up giving me this tile. This is another moment. They have so few things that they've made, and this was one of them, and while we were talking, I was feeling the back of it, how, I could feel how she made the piece, and this is what I do to clay things, because this is what I do. And then before we left, she gave it to me, so I had to write my name on it and stuff. And then they gave me a disc of Cuban music that you were listening to. And I have to say, I went down there. I was an exchange student for a year right after high school, and part of my core beliefs is that you can change your own world. You can't change everything else, but you can change your own world. And the best way to find connections with people is to go down there and be with them. So I brought that with me to Cuba, and from day one, made it my mission to connect as much as possible with a taxi driver. Michael mentioned I had all the toys and little things, and I wanted to give them to the kids, but I didn't want to just give them to them. I always took the chance to go up to the parents and say, in Spanish, I have something for your child, can I give it to them? And they would always look at me and say yes, and those things are what I'm taking to the concept behind the artwork that I'm proposing for this Cuban show.
Let's hear a few words and lines in Spanish from you.
Si puedo hablar español, pero no me olvido casi todo y yo necesito hablar como se dice, around it. I can speak Spanish, but I find myself describing things like, I'll go, that thing that goes around the table that you sit in, this one's brown, this one's white, and they'll go, the chair, and I'll go, yeah, the chair. So if I could just remember nouns, I'd be really good. But
You even said, like, when you were there, like, it's starting to kick back in a little bit.
Yeah.
Immerse into it.
Well, day one, I thought like, oh, cool, I'll try Spanish. And then day two, it was like, you have to translate for our drivers. Yeah.
You're the group
Another
translator.
artist, another art school, really near Havana. This guy is trained, made this school in a little house. He's teaching kids when he can. Foosters, you saw these amazing things as a ceramic artist. Sandra Ramos, she lives in Miami, internationally known. Google her artwork, politically charged. She's doing video work about Trump that we watched. Just intelligent, really great stuff. Her sister was the one that showed us around because Sandra's not in town. That's funny that you put the picture of me and you in there. There's Mikey with his boxer guy, and you can see in the bottom there. We went back because he was like, I found this boxing ring, we gotta go check it out. And so we went back there and they were doing practice, so that's cool. Me with Cubans, again, this was what I love so much. I brought back 4 boxes of cigars because you're allowed to bring back as many as you want. But I bought the cigars from these guys in their house because we talked on the street, we went into their house, then I brought other people back, and it was just the greatest interaction. And talk about not being scared to go into someone's house, go around the corner with them. They're all talking to you and you do feel that they're trying to get maybe $1 or $2 from you, but you never have the feeling that they're going to take you around the corner and beat you up and take what you have. It's like it's not even in their thinking to do that, and it might be the consequences that they would face, but really I just think they're a very peaceful community because they are. That's how they are. We bought cheese from this guy on the side of the highway. This cool picture, you know.
Did you run into
Marbles.
Americans anywhere?
Yes, some. A lot of other, not many Americans actually, but a lot of other tourists, Asian and European tourists are there. But even that's way down because if the United States says don't travel somewhere, the world listens.
Do you have to fly out of Canada?
No, you can fly out of the United States still. You have to travel with a licensed Cuban traveler now. Obama lifted that. It was for maybe a year or so we could travel as we want. It's now back in place. But we can fly from the States. Roomies, back of the car. There's Ruthie. Ruthie is the organizer of the trip with Michael. She makes the itineraries, and as you can imagine, there's a lot going on.
We went 2 cabs.
Everywhere.
It's great old.
I've got a picture. Here, you saw a better picture of that. This is on the way to Montanza's. Here's the cabs, the orange cabs, and these are our 2 drivers. So this is me standing there with Ruthie trying to translate, and I was like, I have to step back and take a picture of this. So I remember this moment because it was just insane. They were like, where are we meeting? Here? And she's like, over there. And they're like, here? And food, pictures, you know, those are always fun. This was the restaurant that Obama visited, and it ended up in his the book of his pictures, and the chef came out and greeted us. Amazing multi-course dinner, rum, wine, big fat cigar at the end, just cake, and it was like $50. It was like way more than we spent on any other meal, but it was still like $50. And we bought someone else's, so mine was like $35.
And you lose perspective when you're there, like, oh, $50.
Yeah.
5-course meal, I don't know.
Especially at the end, because you bring your money and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna buy this plate, I'm gonna buy this, I bought some trinkets and stuff, things for the kids, of course, and the cigars. So this one here, this says El Perito. This is why that experience is so cool. So it turns out one of those guys worked in the factory. That's how he had all these boxes of cigars. They're not supposed to sell them, but they're allowed to take them. It's part of their payment because they can't pay them very much money, so they give them cigars. So a friend of mine, Tariq, actually was like, I just want 1 cigar. I don't want a whole box. And so I said, I'll buy this box, but give me one for my friend. And he goes, I'll give you this one. It's rolled by a student in the factory, so it's not that good of a cigar. It's like, this is the best thing ever. So yeah, that's what the blue El Perito cigar is. Mark Bush, one of the painters, he brought this Polaroid camera, and so of course, everybody in Cuba was loving. They don't get their picture taken as much as we do. And so these 2 girls were following us around at our studio. I gave them a bubble wand thing, and then they came back and I gave them a bouncy ball, and then they came back and I gave them some.
They followed us for a while.
And they're like, picture. I just love this. This was right underneath. That's our building. Our balconies up here. Cuban television. I mean, there's nothing in that. It's abandoned. You know, the history that you can see, even that contemporary history that's not there anymore, but it's still just sitting there because they can't do anything about it. It's the inside of our apartment. circle bed, spray paint in the corner. There's that again. And there's beer. Enjoy beer in Cuba. That's what you should do. All right, I went to 1 o'clock. 1:03, I have students downstairs.
What you took to Cuba and brought back to us, we are so delighted you are with us permanently here at the Cultural Arts Center as our instructors. What gifts you are to us.
Sorry,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.